The morning started like any other episode of The View Bright Lights. It's over-caffeinated chatter in a studio full of people ready for entertainment more than enlightenment. But when Clint Eastwood stepped onto the set, something in the air shifted. The applause was loud, but it wasn't the usual celebrity excitement. It was reverence. He carried himself like an old general entering enemy territory. Slow, deliberate, every gesture controlled. Joy Behar smiled her practiced TV smile, but there was tension behind it. It's the kind that cameras don't always catch, but the audience can feel. They greeted each other politely, yet the tone was cold to people from different worlds. Different eras, and about to collide on live television. It started gently enough. The hosts asked about Clint's career, his new movie, and the state of Hollywood. His answers were simple, thoughtful, measured, until Joy leaned forward, voice rising just slightly, and said, "Clint, you've been criticized for romanticizing the past, for holding on to old-fashioned ideas about America, guns, and masculinity. Don't you think it's time to let those go?" The audience laughed nervously, unsure whether it was a joke. Clint didn't smile. He sat back, eyes steady. "You can change the furniture in a house," he said, "but if you tear down the foundation, the roof won't stand long." The crowd murmured, some clapped, some booed. Joy's smile froze. "That sounds like something people say when they're afraid of change," she replied. Clint tilted his head slightly, a faint smirk on his face. "And that sounds like something people say when they don't understand what they're changing." From that moment, the tension became a living thing in the room. The other hosts tried to steer the conversation back, but Joy was already locked in. "You've said before that people today are too sensitive," she pressed. "Do you really believe that? Or are you just out of touch?" Clint leaned closer to the mic, his voice low, calm, but sharp as a blade. "I've been around long enough to know that truth isn't offensive. People just stopped learning how to handle it." The audience gasped, a mix of admiration and shock. Joy folded her arms. "So the rest of us are just too soft for you?" Clint shrugged. "If the shoe fits..." Laughter and applause broke out, but Joy's expression hardened. The chemistry that usually fueled the view, loud opinions bouncing safely off one another, had turned volatile. It was no longer banter. It was a duel. Producers behind the cameras started to shift nervously. The teleprompter scrolled to the next segment, but neither Joy nor Clint seemed to care. "You can't just dismiss everyone who disagrees with you," she said, her voice rising. "That's not wisdom, that's arrogance." Clint's expression didn't change. "In calling people outdated because you don't understand them, that's not progress, that's ignorance." For a second, even the studio lights seemed to dim. Joy's jaw tightened. "Maybe you should try listening more," she shot back. "Maybe you should try thinking for yourself," he countered. The audience was no longer clapping, they were silent, leaning forward, watching history unfold in real time. Then came the moment that would go viral across every platform. Joy, visibly agitated, leaned toward him and said, "You can't just come here and preach to people about morality when half your films are about men shooting each other." Clint smiled faintly, that same half grin that made him a legend, and replied, "My movies show consequences. You just prefer to pretend they don't exist." Gasps, applause, shouting, the studio erupted. Joy turned to the audience. "This is exactly what I mean. This macho nonsense has no place anymore." Clint stood slowly, taking off his microphone. "Then maybe I don't either." Chaos followed. Producers rushed forward, trying to calm things down. One host whispered something off camera, another gestured to go to commercial. But Clint was already walking away. "Mr. Eastwood, please!" one of the assistants called after him. He didn't look back. Joy sat frozen, anger and disbelief written all over her face. The crowd didn't know whether to clap or stay quiet. When the broadcast cut to break, social media was already on fire. Clips of the exchange spread faster than the network could control. Clint Eastwood destroys Joy Behar on live TV. Hollywood legend walks off the view. In the control room, phones rang non-stop. Someone muttered, "We just broke the internet." By the afternoon, the clip had tens of millions of views. Hashtags trended globally. Eastwood walks off, The View, Meltdown, Joy v. S. Clint. News outlets replayed the footage on loop, analysts debated who was right, and celebrities began taking sides. Some praised Clint for defending old-school values. Others called him outdated and condescending.
Ow.
Joy went silent publicly, but was reportedly furious behind the scenes, telling staff that he disrespected the format and the message. ABC released a statement, calling it an unfortunate moment of tension between two icons. Clint said nothing. Not to the press, not to anyone. Later that week, he was spotted at a small diner outside Carmel, sipping black coffee, reading a newspaper that had his face plastered on the front page. A reporter approached him and asked, "Do you regret walking off?" Clint looked up calm as ever and said, "You can't regret walking away from noise." Then he paid his bill, left a generous tip, and walked out into the morning sun. Meanwhile, Joy went back on air 2 days later, addressing the moment with a half smile and a warning tone. Let's just say she told the audience. Some guests forget whose house they're in. The crowd laughed. But even she knew that wasn't the end of it. Days turned into weeks. But the echoes of that clash refused to fade. Commentators called it a cultural moment. Old America versus New America. Fans filled forums with debates about respect, ego, freedom of speech, and the future of entertainment. Some viewers demanded Clint be banned from live TV. Others said The View had finally met someone who wouldn't bow to its script. The network milked the publicity, airing special extended coverage of the episode, while both stars avoided each other completely. Months later, Clint was asked in an interview if he'd ever return to The View. He chuckled softly. "I don't think they'd let me in the door," he said. Then his tone turned thoughtful. "But maybe that's all right. Some rooms are too small for honesty." That line spread across the internet, once again quoted, clipped, turned into memes and think pieces. The moment he walked off, The View stopped being a scandal and became a symbol, one man refusing to trade silence for approval. Whether people agreed or not didn't matter anymore. Clint Eastwood had done what he'd always done, walked straight through the storm and never looked back. Weeks later, when the noise had finally settled, the producers of The View quietly admitted off-record that the Eastwood episode had given them the biggest ratings in 2 years. Irony hung thick in the air. The moment they tried to contain had become their greatest success. Meanwhile, Clint stayed silent, never releasing an official statement. But that silence spoke louder than any tweet or press release could. In an era where everyone rushed to apologize, explain, or soften their stance, Clint's refusal to play that game made him an enigma and a legend all over again. Joy Behar, on the other hand, doubled down. She gave interviews about toxic nostalgia, saying she wouldn't back down from calling out old Hollywood's stubbornness. Yet every time she brought it up, viewers noticed something. The fire in her voice wasn't anger anymore, it was defense. As if somewhere deep down, she knew that what happened that morning had struck a nerve not just with Clint, but with America itself. In the days that followed, social media turned into a battlefield. Hashtags like Team Clint and Cancel The View flooded every platform. Clips of the confrontation spread like wildfire, slowed down, analyzed, remixed with dramatic music, and captioned with phrases like, "Respect still matters," and "Hollywood's last real man." Some saw Clint Eastwood's walk-off as a masterclass in dignity. Others called it arrogance. But the truth was simpler. He had drawn a line. While pundits debated whether it was a publicity stunt or an honest outburst, ordinary people connected to something raw in that moment. They saw a man refusing to be shouted down, refusing to trade truth for applause. Late-night hosts joked about it. News panels dissected it frame by frame. Yet behind all the noise, the core of the story remained untouched. It wasn't about politics, age, or ego. It was about one man standing his ground in a world that seemed to reward outrage more than integrity. And that, perhaps, was why the clip refused to fade away. Echoing long after the camera stopped rolling, Clint Eastwood's response didn't come through a press conference or a publicist's neatly typed statement. It came quietly, like everything he did. A week after the clash, he appeared at a small film festival in Nevada, dressed simply, no entourage, no spotlight. When someone from the audience asked about The View, he chuckled softly, that trademark half-smile crossing his face. "You don't argue with people who enjoy arguing," he said. "You just keep doing your work." The crowd erupted into applause. Not the loud, performative kind, but the warm, honest kind that fills a room with respect. Reporters tried to get more out of him, but Clint moved on to talking about storytelling, discipline, and how the world confuses attention for achievement. That moment became its own headline: "Eastwood breaks silence with class." For every talk show voice shouting on national TV, Clint's calm carried more weight. It reminded everyone why his name had lasted decades, because it